Alrighty, now that you've actually modeled the Trojan block itself, I'm going to blow your minds with what we can do next. So, notice I have actually saved this file already. That's an important step to do this. Now you would come up here to the new, and now what we're going to do is make an assembly from the part, or if it were an assembly from that. Now, it's going to look pretty much sort of the same as what we had before, but notice now this tab that used to say features says assembly. We've got a thing that says layout now too. Some of these other things. If you see this tab that says assembly, you are in assembly mode. This is a thing that's unique to SolidWorks. Alright, so Mr. Foreman block demonstration you'll see is already showing up here in this thing, part assembly to insert. Okay, notice there's this little button here that looks like a push pin. If it's not like that, if it's grayed out, we're going to want to click on that first and say keep visible. Okay, if you want to have that keep visible, I'll show you what that does in a second, but we want to keep that there, pin that. Now if I click, oh, it was highlighted there. Notice how I've got this little part icon next to my cursor as I move into the graphics area here. If I click once with that going there, oh, voila! I've got, let's see, I've got one of my blocks here. Now if I click again over there, wait a minute, I've got another one. This is literally as if you were taking a few Legos and setting them out on the table in front of you to then actually be able to put them together. So I'm going to do just 3 to start right now to keep things reasonable. If you keep clicking, you can end up having a whole gaggle of blocks to play around with, but that could get a little overwhelming to start. So here we go. I have got 3 blocks in the same space. Notice how this one has the letter F next to it. And notice also that as I hover over it, it's got an orange box showing that that's that part. It's actually that part, and that is that part, but 3 instances of the same part. And notice that SolidWorks knows how to count. 1, 2, and 3. Alright, so cool. 3 parts. Well, what do we want to do with these things now? Whoa, I can move that one around in space. I can move that one around in space. And this one, though, that has the letter F next to it, it is what is called fixed in space. And it says the selected component is fixed, it cannot be moved. Alright, so that is stuck in space right now. But wait a minute, we want to make this one, say, sit next to that one as if it was like on the table in front of you, next, like butted up against that. Okay, so here's how we're going to do this. This little thing that has the paper clip next to it, that is mate. Okay, so you're going to want to mate these 2 components together. Alright, notice again how this thing is keep visible and pinned. I want that. So pin that dialog box. Okay. Now, what we're going to be dealing with first here is this thing called Coincident Mates. That literally is like butting one face up against another. So our most basic mate type, you're going to probably use this the most of almost anything. And notice I have nothing selected yet, no faces I've actually clicked on yet. Because what we're going to want to do is it's going to be that face. We're going to mate to start. Actually, let's do this the other way, as if they were both sitting on the same surface. That'll make a lot of sense yet, but what we'll do actually first is we're going to do mating this face to this face, theoretically. It's going to be like to align them. We're going to see how this works right now and what it decides to do. So I'm going to click on that face, and then I'm going to click on that face. It did what I wanted it to do. Now, if your parts came together and they did something like, if I click on this, flip mate alignment, watch, it's going to allow, oops, that's going face to face that way. But that doesn't really do us any good to put our bricks together. So notice that flip mate alignment is going to be an important thing to know. So if I flip that again, back it goes. Nice. I click check right there. So now, noticing that, now what's going to happen is it's kind of hard to see from this orientation, and this is where it gets a little orienting with assembly mode, and you just got to practice and get used to it. That I can move this back and forth. It looks like I'm able to move it up in space, but really not. They're actually still, those faces are perfectly aligned to each other. as if they were like sliding across a glass tabletop. But what we haven't done yet, we need to say mate. So notice how I'm still in mate here, and I'm still going to click coincident. I want to click that face. Let's see how that face highlighted orange. I'm going to zoom in and I want to click and move that face to that face. All right. Now they're butted up against each other, and this probably is going to start to look a little bit more uniform here. Ah, yes, that makes sense. I can only move back and forth this way. Well, how am I going to keep it going? Well, I'd click on that face to that face, right? Well, what if I make a mistake here and I do that and I accidentally click on that face? Oops. Okay, didn't want that. You can just come back here. If you highlight over these things, it's going to show you which face you're actually talking about. It's a subtle change of blue. So it's actually this face. I can come back and then just delete that selection, okay? Didn't want that. Come back. Oops! Reverse to prevent mate errors. Well, we've got that, though I can also then reverse that. Oh! And then reverse to prevent mate errors. It may pop that up a few times, but now, wait a minute, I'm trying to move that brick or block, and it's giving me the same thing. The selected component is fully defined. It can't be moved. Wow. Cool. Well, it's locked in space. Okay, so that's cool. I've got two bricks that theoretically lock together, but it's they're just stuck there next to each other. Okay. Now, the other thing to see here too is this brick that is fixed in space right now. If I right click on that, I can actually come down here to this thing that says float. Okay, because it just kind of dropped in space wherever it was. And now we've got this here. They're both free floating in here in space, but they are locked together because they're mated there, and that actual mated up coincident face right there. Okay, but here we go. You can actually, we've still got front plane, top plane, and right plane to deal with and work with. So what you may want to do, and I find this always kind of a helpful thing, is always work to the first part you drop in here. You want to make sure that it's like set and oriented to these existing planes. So I'm just going to turn these on so I can see them. If you remember that, I'm right clicking, show, right click, show, doing all that. Okay. Oh, why am I not seeing? Probably got this turned off. View planes. There we go. Now I can see my planes. That's a good thing. Alright, so this block right here, which was block number 1, I'm going to show you this other cool thing too. If you right click on that part itself, there's this thing that's move with triad when you're here. This is a very helpful method. Now that that thing is floated, you can move this more accurately in any orientation. But now that this thing's fully in floating, I can actually rotate it and do all sorts of other funky stuff. So tell you what we're going to do to start. So see how that could be kind of off cattywampus in space that way. I'm going to then decide to do a mate. I'm going to mate this face, and I'm going to consider that the top plane would be like the top surface of a tabletop that I'm actually working on here. So there that goes. Now I have mated that part to the top face or plane in the whole assembly like that. Then I'm going to come back here. I'm going to click that part there. Guess what? It's going to be coincident to front plane now. Check. And then this face right here is going to be coincident to right plane right there. Alright, now that's going to be all locked into space here again. Okay. Okay, now here we go. What if we want to get this block on top of the other two right here? And we'll even have it straddle both parts. Why not? So we're going to use a mate again. Now this is where you got to learn some technique, because things can get a little dicey if you try and jump in and do one mate. So we used a coincident mate before. We're going to use a concentric mate now on this one. So I'm going to click on concentric, and that will make two circular features have their center points be exactly the same in alignment. So I'm actually going to click on, say, that rounded filleted edge of the bottom part. And then I want it to be aligned to that part right there. And there is a button that says lock rotation, but I'm going to hold off on that for a second. So now if I click and move this part, you can see that it can move up and down, and it's actually free to rotate theoretically. So it's as if it's riding along that boss extended all the way up and there was a hole and you could spin it around that. So notice, cool, that's aligned there. Now guess what? I'm going to want to do another concentric mate between, I'm going to go catty corner or diagonal across the part. So from that one to, and I'm getting a little misoriented, I'm going to do Control 7 to go to isometric view to get back to a little bit better orientation. Not so dizzy. So that face there to that circumference of that boss. Nice. That's now aligned. And now notice when I do this, move that up and down. Wow, that's cool. But they're aligned. So now the next thing I can do, the last thing, is going to be this bottom face right here. Click on that. To this top face right here. Boom. Check. Alright, we are good now. Okay, so I've got 3 blocks assembled together. And guess what? Then you can start building up from there. You could drop in a new component, insert components, come back to that, click there, populate in. Oops, I didn't pin my... That's what happened when I didn't... it was pinned, so why didn't it drop one more in? Whoops, excuse me, that was the wrong thing. Insert components. Make sure that I'm pinned. Now I could just start dropping more in here. So it popped me out of there when I didn't have that little push pin down to keep it up. Alright, so you can then populate some more in. So have some fun, assemble some things up, build a wall, build a little thing like that. But then next ones I'm going to show you how we can modify the existing block to have different thicknesses and lengths so we could start doing cooler build-ups and stuff. So anyway, that is the basics of assembly. We could build a car. Alright, very cool.